Cassidy from Tactile Technology my collar's not straight, so I better tie myself up. And it's our Diamanti Monday. So today we've actually got Erikjan Franssen with us to talk about Specktra 3 and some of the benefits of it. So, how are you, Eric?
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Great to be on. I think last time we spoke was early July. I hope that the audience that's listening in also had a good summer holiday and some time to recharge, especially during this kind of special year. Obviously,
Yeah, it's a
I
challenging
know
time for us all.
I know I did for 2 weeks with my family, but I'm glad to be back on and glad to be talking to you about exciting times in the life of Diamanti as we go forward.
So coming on to Spectre 3 then, I think there's a couple of things that a lot of people have been trying to drive towards with their infrastructure, such as multi-cloud and also multi-cluster type environments. But the ability to have both in the same production environment is quite interesting. So what do you think the value that brings to most organizations?
Now let's go back a little bit to what the market was set out to do, right? At some point in our lifetime, we were delivering monolithic applications, and then we moved over to cut those applications up in containers because that supported the agile way of working, individual teams working on individual containers, and those containers combined together would make a finalized product, and you could go optimizing the containers as you went along. Then came the Kubernetes distribution layer, the Kubernetes orchestration layer around those containers. And one of the things that we set out to do was all becoming cloud native, right? We wanted to develop the applications cloud native. And one of the biggest benefits of being cloud native is that cloud native has the premise of you running your application anywhere you want, whether it's on premise, on your existing infrastructure, or whether it's in any cloud distribution that is available. And one of the things that has happened, obviously, in the market as the market progressed from on-premise to cloud is that some of the customers and a lot of organizations went into a new vendor lock-in while they went into the cloud. They found out that certain applications were way too expensive to run into cloud. Certain applications were only fit for the cloud at certain periods in time, and other applications were only fit for on-premise due to data privacy or any other issues. So we kind of created that two-faced beast where there was a strict decision to be made, first of all, on-premise versus cloud. And then if you go into cloud, which cloud would it be? Well, that is what Diamanti Specktra is exactly set out to release you from.
Yeah, I'm going to say, from my perspective, most people were moving to a cloud environment to get away from this cyclic purchasing thing that they had to do. So repeatedly going every 18 months to work out what storage systems, what compute platforms, what network they needed, go through implementation, then start the process again 18 months later. But I think there's a lot more to it than that. I think they also believed they were going to save money. And in a lot of cases, that's not been the case, has it?
No, absolutely not. And I mean, we're good as Diamanti. We come from the infrastructure side, but we're firm believers in the cloud, right? We've always supported the cloud native foundation certified distribution of Kubernetes, right? The vanilla Kubernetes, or as you call it. And we've always set out, develop your applications in there and make sure that you have the flexibility to move around. But that hasn't necessarily happened in cloud. A great article I published earlier on LinkedIn, and I know you and I had a discussion on LinkedIn about it in the register, was about how cloud costs are running out of control due to the pricing methods that the cloud has, due to the non-suitability to certain applications, and especially with the IO intensive workloads or stateful applications, as they might be, so databases or Splunk or Elastic, they're running into active trouble, whether it's in over spending in the cloud, or whether it's the inability to migrate those stateful applications from the on-premise infrastructure, so they're more locked into their on-premise infrastructure, and being able to move it into cloud. And I think Diamanti is a unique, what I would say, advantage in there, because the problem arises in the relationship between the container and the underlying infrastructure. Now, what Diamanti knows is exactly how you solve that problem, because we've solved that problem ourselves. And now we exactly know how to run that in the public cloud. And we give you that flexibility to move around between on-premise, between the public cloud, between another public cloud, and make up your mind between Microsoft, Google, and Amazon as you go forward.
And if we look at it from a business perspective, one of the big drivers is this agile development, so that people can, build out their application base and their business services much quicker and deploy them much quicker and meet the needs both of the end user and the business, isn't it? And I think people adopted containers because they could see that they could develop them and apply them anywhere. It didn't matter. They could do it on-prem. They could run it in a public cloud environment. But the big challenge was the data side, wasn't it? It's how do you get the data there and also ensure that it works correctly when that data is there as well, because it's not as easy as you think to create the similar environment between, say, Azure's container environment and an on-prem cluster and be able to make the
Yeah.
two work together. So do you think that's a key thing then from Specktra?
Yeah, absolutely. Because what we'll actually provide you is also capacity to run your dev tests on premise, and then burst into cloud, or run your dev test into cloud and then burst to on premise, right? When your application becomes IO intensive. So because of our deep knowledge of infrastructure, and effectively, let's be honest, cloud is also infrastructure in another man's data center, right? We have a deep knowledge of the underlying infrastructure, so we know we can combine the application level knowledge combined with the underlying data knowledge, and we can make sure that those replications, what you're just talking about, when you're migrating between the one and the other, are done in the right way so it stays production ready in public cloud or on premise or whatever combination you might think of what it would have. And then added to that, obviously, that gives the end user or the organization that's working with this the ability to really have that, what I would call a fish market experience, right? Then the real flexibility comes around. Okay, for a certain application that I've mapped out, these are the costs when I run it in AWS, these are the costs when I run it in Google, and these are the costs when I run it on premise, based on certain metrics. That could be IOPS required, that could be amount of network traffic required, but you can finally make that decision as you go along from a single pane of glass inside of the Diamanti Specktra.
I think that's been a difficult thing for people to do, actually do a comparison, hasn't it, of both cost and performance. So having that simple ability to, say, develop locally on a cluster and benchmark it, see what performance metrics you're getting, understand the costs there, and then say a one-click migration of that application to AWS and to GCP, and then do a comparison of performance and also compare the costs. It's
Yeah.
something that people haven't been able to do in the past. It's been very difficult for them to judge that. They've had to be able to use spreadsheets and roughly work it out for themselves, but they're not going to get very realistic figures, are they?
Yeah, and another example is a large Italian financial institution that we're working with has been with Diamanti from the start. There's a ton of articles published on what they do. But what we're now part of is a whole migration path from them. They've signed, which is publicly information, they've signed a memorandum of understanding with Google, where Google will take over the bank's capabilities and do all the IT infrastructure, and they'll build up data centers. But what effectively the bank is looking for is kind of an insurance certificate with Diamanti to make sure that those applications get migrated from the on-premise Diamanti in cloud native way to Google, but then also have the ability to manage and monitor those applications as they sit in their new data center and making sure they're working exactly the right way. So Diamanti Specktra serves as kind of an insurance certificate for that financial institution.
Yeah, so if they later decide that the relationship's not working, they can then look around for the next bride and then migrate.
And migrate, and for me, coming back to the start of our conversation, that is what for me drives the reason for developing cloud native. I think that's why the whole cloud native foundation was founded, was to make sure that application portability between all those individual platforms would be guaranteed. And that is what Diamanti and the wave that Diamanti rides on. And I think that with the Specktra release, we've shown our continued commitment to do that.
And let's talk about release dates. So we've got Specktra 3 released already, but at the
Yeah,
moment it provides capability of migrating workloads to and from Azure, I believe.
yeah,
And
yeah. So
AWS, when's that going to be released?
very soon. So let's give the time frame that towards at the end of the year, all the public cloud vanilla, all the public cloud say should be in there. We've developed it for Azure right now. That was driven by some customer demand. We already have customer demand for AWS and also for the Google platform. And the good news is because we've done it through our Azure right now, we can very, very quickly develop. You might have seen, for people that follow Diamanti very strictly, we are releasing in very, very big, short cycles. I think our 2.3 release was somewhere back in May. We're already at 3.0 right now. So we're continuing to release and develop our platform. So as we go along towards the end of the year, full production ready GA capabilities should be absolutely there for the public cloud to taste.
So another area that I know a lot of people are concerned about when they're running containers locally, especially if they're using something like VMware to do it or an alternative, is that control over the environment, how you create some kind of role-based management and how you split the environment up. Where do you think Specktra benefits a customer in that space?
Yeah, so Specktra has been released with a whole capability of setting up individual projects or individual roles assigned with those projects. So not necessarily every infrastructure operator or any application developer can migrate applications or do certain stuff to your infrastructure that you don't want to. So with the new Specktra released inside of our multi-cluster and multi-cloud management is also came with a whole role-based capability where you can assign certain rights to certain people to do certain elements, but also guarantee certain amount of IOPS to certain applications, right? So customer-facing applications that are absolutely critical to your business might have a guaranteed set of IOPS coming from the underlying infrastructure, whereas other applications that might be around might have best effort because it doesn't matter so much. So there's now finally the capability to make those different roles, which, by the way, is not only interesting, is not only interesting for enterprise end users, but also for managed service providers, right? Because they can now distinct between different customers and have the same customer running on the same or a few customers running on the same infrastructure and make the decision on where they sit, on how they sit themselves.
Yeah, I think that separation in two ways, because we're doing two different things, aren't we? Here, we're separating the infrastructure so we can create this multi-tenanted environment across a cluster or across a cloud service, and it can be a mixture of the two. So we can have this setup like a tenancy that's a particular department or a particular organization across both a cloud or multi-cloud and multi-cluster environment. But also in each one of those, you can set RBAC criteria, so specific role-based access control, so you could have someone who can just view the information. You've got people who can actually go in there and do the operational management, deployment, plus all the way to the top level administration of it. So I think that makes things a little bit different as well, because most people, if they're using a standard hypervisor environment, to give people control to do things, they've got full control over everything across all of the hosts commonly. So it makes it very difficult to control people into particular areas unless you create separate environments with separate hosts. And if you go down that route, you're losing some of the benefits of multiple hosts from a resource pool perspective. Plus, you're also limiting your capabilities from an HA perspective as well.
Yeah, and definitely, what does that contribute again? Optimize usage of your on-premise infrastructure and your cloud infrastructure. Built-in security controls for multiple users on the multiple angles, and making sure that your applications run as your end users want it. Again, we come back to our beginning of our discussion, which is why cloud native and the whole containerized world was ever developed. So I think that's a sound answer to those questions.
Yeah, I think security, you mentioned security there, is a key thing that people are concerned about. But having that granular capability per container in this environment, so you can specify what level of security, even such as encryption of disks. You mentioned about the availability of performance, but I believe you can encrypt at that container level. So each PV for the container or multiple containers with the same PVC, the data is encrypted at rest as well. So that makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and that's key for us.
So we've got a couple of takeaways, haven't we, for people? One is we've got this event that teaches people what Specktra can do. I can't remember the date. What date was that? It's next week, isn't it?
September 17th.
Okay.
9 a.m. at British Standard Time, 10 a.m. Central European Time.
So what I'll do is I'll put that into the comments for this video, so people have got that and they can go and register for that and hopefully join next week. I think the other thing is we talked about putting together an analysis of costings for people, because depending on whether they're running locally using a hypervisor or other alternative technology, understand the costs there. Also understand their costs with whichever or multiple public cloud provider they're running containers at the moment. It would be good to do a cost analysis and compare it to if they were running on a Diamanti platform and using Specktra to do that workload migration between platforms.
Yeah. So open invite to everybody that's listening. Diamanti holds some of the best consultants when it comes down to these cost analysis, people that are coming from the public cloud world, people that are coming from the infrastructure side of the house, whether it's an on-premise virtualized environment cost comparison or a public cloud. Hey, I'm running my IO intensive workload in a public cloud, or I'm fed up with the amount of cost that I get charged to my business group every month. We can have some perfect analysis in that, and that's all based. It's not based on any thoughts of Diamanti. It's just based on publicly available information and our knowledge of how that could work. And it's a free assessment, and we're more than willing to engage with that.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, we're just coming up to 17 minutes. So any other thing you'd like to mention about this Specktra 3 release before we close off for the day?
I think it's important for people to understand that absolutely it's GA for Azure right now. Also an open invite if you're more technical oriented user or you're interested to see how Specktra really works, then for sure go on to the 17th of September. That's more with our CEO and our head of product management. But if you're more listening in from a more technical side, I have Specktra 3.0 running in different data centers in the world. We're open invite also to come and try it out and figure out whether this could really mean something for you. So open invite. That's what the key takeaway would be. We're not shying away from doing live demonstrations and doing active proof of concepts with this platform, because we think it's really, really good and we're really proud of it.
Well, I remember a few weeks ago that we had Boris on, and we actually did a live deployment of multi-environment Elasticsearch, with 3 different sets of collectors and data sets for it. So, that was quite impressive to see as well. So, you're definitely not shy of doing demonstrations.
We've prayed a lot to the demo gods, so it must all be going well this
that's
time.
it. Yeah, you've got to always pray to the demo gods. I've been there myself plenty of times. All right, well, thank you very much for your time today, Erikjan, and I shall put those details of the 2 offers into the comments for everyone, and hopefully speak to you soon.
Thanks
a lot.